for the September meeting of the Bristol Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee meeting. So for anybody joining us who hasn't been with us before, the order of operations here is some basic housekeeping, approval of the meeting minutes, public forum, any specific agenda items, other business, and then we adjourn. We always start typically with the public forum to give any members of the public a chance to speak so that they don't have to wait around through to the end of the meeting in case they have anything else to do. They don't want to stick around and watch the process or anything like that. We will bring the meeting to order right now. Could I get a actually, we don't have to do anything formal for that. The first agenda item is, as always, the approval of last month's meeting minutes. So everyone knows the meeting minutes are in our cloud share. If anybody needs a link to that, please let me know. Our meeting minutes from last month are very thin, given that we did not have full board attendance. We had 2 members of the public join. And it was overall not a very eventful meeting. So can I get a motion to approve last month's meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
Can I get a second?
I second that motion.
Terrific. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Brad. So first agenda item, first formal agenda item for tonight is public forum. Everyone, as you all see, we've got our esteemed former member of the board, Jessica Teets, current select board member here. She had reached out to me. She's got some select board updates that she'd like to share. So we're going to give her position 1 in tonight's program. Jessica, you want to take things away?
Sure, thank you.
You're welcome.
So as you all know, I'm your liaison to the select board. So if I find things on the agenda that I think you should know about, I'll share them with you. If there are things that you want to ask me, please ask me. So one thing that I wanted to mention is that our application for being designated as a downtown have been approved by the I forget what it's called, the Downtown Alliance or something like that. But what that means, none of that's really that important for this group, except that what it means is that we're able to reduce the speed limit as part of that policy. So if this group wanted to bring up reducing the speed limit in town, this would be a good time to do it. So you can have it put on the agenda. You can talk about why it would be a good idea, why people want it, and then the select board would vote on it. So that was the first thing, was the being able to reduce the speed. The other thing, well, so Pine Street is on the agenda, so we'll wait for that. The other thing is that we've approved a capital investment plan for the town of Bristol. This is just a plan, so it doesn't necessarily mean that we'll do exactly what it says in exactly the order or the amounts. But the idea is that we can start to plan ahead for major investment projects. So that's the budget that has by year and by location all of the road paving and sidewalk plans. So that might be a really good document for us to start getting the things that we want to fund in that document as well. So if, for example, they're going to pave a street and that's a street where we would, want a bike lane or something like that, that you would want to make sure that that was part of the budget. So it's just a planning tool, but you should use it as well for your planning. Because what we're finding is that for doing projects like the water line replacement project, we're going to be ripping up a lot of sidewalks and a lot of streets. We're trying our best not to do that if we don't have to, but there are places where it will have to happen. So those will be great opportunities if we're going to repave or redo sidewalks for your committee to have a voice in, what does that look like? Is there a way to do it that's like safer or will promote more people to walk or bike? So I just wanted you to be aware that that document was out there. And then the last thing is just that we do have the town grant writer, and she's been really effective so far in securing grants for the town. She does a really great job. And so as you put together whatever your agenda is, you know, what sorts of grants you'd like to apply for, you should definitely meet with her fairly regularly just to check in, let her know what you're interested in, so that if you're interested in something and VTrans, for example, is funding projects like that, that she can put in an application for us. As always, you know, for every town, the more grant funding you can bring in and the less money we have to spend on it, the more we can get done. So those are just some of the updates that I wanted to share with you. Any questions? Comments? Anything like that?
I do. I want to wait though. Tanya, it sounds like you have something.
Just for the speed limit lowering, should we still, even though it's sort of part of this whole change in downtown, should we still do a survey or something to back that up?
Yeah, I guess it's up to you. I mean, what we did previously was we did do a survey and we did outreach, and we found overwhelming support within the village for lowering the speed limit. The people who didn't want the speed limit lowered were people who lived outside of the village, but who commuted through the village. And so they had some concerns. So I don't know how necessary it is. I mean, if you could rally people to attend the meeting and voice their support, I think that that would be a good thing. The select board held two public meetings, two open meetings to collect feedback. And the first meeting was overwhelmingly positive, and the second one was a bit mixed. And that's sort of where they left it. And it's just, you know, on the select board, like we'll meet for 4 hours at a time. These agendas are huge and there's so much stuff going on that if there isn't somebody there sort of pushing things through, oftentimes what happens is we hear an issue, we, you know, have some initial thoughts, and then it just sort of sits there until somebody puts it back on the agenda. So I don't know how much extra work you have to do other than just putting it on the agenda and then trying to see if people will, you know, attend the meeting on Zoom or come in person to show their support.
Got it. The second, you know, I have a couple things that when we discuss Pine Street, we'll probably come back to that. Especially the speed limit thing. Jessica, your second item, that planning document, that's for just typical planning versus expense planning versus, say, anything that would be grant funded?
No, it's sort of all in there. The idea is that that we sort of create a plan for the next 5 or so years
Okay,
that would
okay,
list all of the intended projects and the estimated costs. So for some of them, you know, we've had like engineering or design work done, and so we have an idea of what it might cost. We would plan for the full amount with the hope that then we would get a grant or have some other way of sharing the cost. So
got it.
when you open that document, you'll see that the full costs are associated with each one of the line items. But then obviously the idea is that we'll try to get as much of that funded with grants and other sources of funding.
Okay, got it. Any other questions or comments for Jessica? All right, thank you for that, Jessica.
Yeah.
We appreciate your attendance on these. So are there any other public comments or issues or anything that anyone wants to bring forth before we roll in to the rest of the agenda for tonight?
I can jump in as Locomotion's new liaison for this walk bike group. I know Susan has been in attendance for a few of these and has struggled just with her schedule to make these Thursday evening slots. So I'm here in her place. I'm happy to kind of get to know each of you and your goals. And just as a refresher, Locomotion, we have no official position on any of these walk bike groups, but we kind of exist to just extend the amount of work that you all can do volunteering your time for these these goals that you have as a walk bike group. We can provide technical assistance. We can help with distribution of surveys and outreach, pretty much anything that you would like to do that you can't exactly ask the town to just like take on some work in that way. We can help with. We can, yeah, we kind of exist to serve these groups in whatever way makes sense.
And Jack, it's nice to see you again. For anybody who wasn't on last month's call, Jack joined us then as well, and I think we're me babbling on about historically about what the group has been up to, just to bring Jack up to speed on things. Took up most of the rather short meeting. So Jack, it's good to see you here again. Does anybody have anything for Jack this month? Jessica?
I didn't have anything for Jack, so if somebody else does, I can wait. Did anyone have anything? Okay. I was just wondering, I know that you said when you started the meeting that you've struggled with attendance and having enough members here. Right now you have, is it 4 members? And how many are on the committee?
Right now we have a total of 5 from a total of 7 seats.
Okay. So it sounds like if you want to put together an appeal for committee members that we could post on Front Porch Forum and each of us could send out through our networks, you know, it would be nice if you could get 1 or 2 more people, just because you do have weeks where people can't attend or somebody gets sick or is on vacation. So it'd be nice if we could get another like 1 or 2 members to add to the committee.
Yes.
Would anyone want to take the lead on typing something like that up and posting it on Front Porch Forum? Doesn't have to be Chris. It could be anyone.
It does have to be Chris.
Oh no.
Thank you for that. I can type something up. I did forward a potential member, someone who had voiced a new community member who reached out and voiced interest in joining the group. I sent that person's information, or I directed that person to the town clerk and the town administrator, and introduced that person to them and said, hey, he's interested in joining. I know that the select board ends up having to do that whole thing. So at least one person has been pushed towards town hall earlier this week for that. So hopefully something comes of that. And Jessica, you've been good about giving me a handful of ideas as well for potential names too. So I can write something up and run it by you, and we can get it posted in short order. Anything else for the public comment stage, or for Jack, or for Jessica?
Just to kind of piggyback on that, we have 85 locomotion contacts on our newsletter that we send out. I don't know, depends on the location and the project that people are interested in, but that if you draft something, we could push it out to those members who have already indicated that they're interested in at least biking. So
Great, thank you. Jessica, maybe you know a little bit about this. I was talking with Taylor Welch from the hub yesterday, and she mentioned, speaking of grants, she mentioned a grant that was focused on sustainable energy relative to means of transportation. And I was doing my level best to figure out how to take one of our ideas that we've got in our parking lot, say more bike racks around town or something like that, and figure out some way of stretching that into something that felt like it was what she was describing. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you have any idea what that grant was?
No, the only one I've heard about is the weatherization one.
Oh, no,
Um,
okay, yeah, that's not
But
us.
definitely work with her, but also reach out to Frida and see
Yep.
if you can have a meeting with her. She's the one who takes the lead, or at least knows about all the grant writing that we do.
Yeah, that's who had told Taylor about it.
Okay, great.
Because I was asking Taylor, I've been working with her off and on the skate park project, and so I asked her if she had been connected with Frida and all that, because most of that funding is going to come through grants, and
Right.
that's when she said she had been told of this one. Jack, what are you looking for a link for?
Oh, that was for the meeting notes. I don't think I
Okay,
have the cloud share.
hold on one second. I'll get a link to our cloud share here. Copy, and I'll throw that in here. Okay. All right, then let's move on to the next agenda item, which is Pine Street. Jessica mentioned this. As most people know, the Pine Street water main replacement project is starting to come to its logical close with the paving or the repaving of Pine Street. Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong, Pine Street grew in width by a foot.
Yes.
Now, is that a foot overall or a foot on each side?
I think it was a foot overall.
Okay, that's kind of what
Um,
I assumed.
Right. Before, when we had Pine Street measured to put in the striping, that was our previous contact with Local Motion. They said that there was enough space to do that. It would drop the road down to a 1-lane road. So if there were 2 cars coming on either side, they would just use the road like they normally do. But if there were pedestrians or bikes in the striped zone, then the cars would, sort of take turns. They would sort of wait for a second and then go around. So that's what I think in the original PowerPoint that I shared with you of the ideas we presented from that committee, you saw what that picture looked like.
Yes. Yeah. So Jessica, as well as a few other people, have reached out and said now's a good time to potentially get traffic calming or get lanes back into the mix, at least as a discussion. So what I did was I went back and I went back and grabbed our original plan for this. The work had stopped, and I'll explain why in a second. But we had walked the plan for lanes on Pine Street up to a certain point, at which stage in the project we were asked by the select board to put that on hold and instead focus on stop signs as an interim move for traffic calming on Pine Street. We drafted a proposal for that, put it in front of the select board, and then they put it on indefinite hold. So what I've done is I've gone and grabbed the old deck. Let me show it. And we're not, it's interesting. I'm not sure what the protocol is here, because we didn't, at the point in the process, Jessica, where this plan had gotten to, it wasn't at a stage where we were voting on it yet to bring it in front of the select board. That happened only after they had redirected us towards the stop sign thing. And then we voted on that formalized plan and put that in front of the select board. So this is something that's at an interim stage. It's not approved. If we had had everybody on this call, I would ask them to vote on it, because the plan itself is described in the work that we had done. It just didn't have the couple extra slides that I had in the stop sign one, where it fully visualized what the plan would look like. It also was based on measurements that Brad and I had taken of the road prior to it being widened. It didn't widen to an appreciable degree that it changed the fact that we were dealing with a 1-lane or a 2-lane road in any way. But I note that because we obviously wanted to get this in front of the select board as soon as possible and Eric Coda as soon as possible, but at the same time, we're at a place where we can't vote on it now because we don't have our full board strength. But I'm gonna show it to everybody so that at least it refamiliarizes everyone with where we were heading back when we were initially doing this back in 2022. And as Jessica noted, this work is based on the work that the ad hoc committee had previously done. We had then, Jessica, taken that work, gone and done additional research, additional site visits, including a couple of the places that are noted in the deck I'm about to show. And through all of that, had come to some conclusions on lane width, line type, and things of that nature. So this was close to being in a place where we could bring it in front of the select board, just not close enough that I'm comfortable with saying, oh, well, you know what? This is ready to roll because we had voted on it. We hadn't voted on this. So let me pull this up. I trust everybody can see this. Pine Street traffic calming. This is a duplicate of the original one, so I've just adjusted this for date. Just some details here on Pine Street traffic calming overall. The due diligence that had been done up to this point had been reviewing best practices, suggestions, and materials that had been provided to us both by Jessica's ad hoc committee as well as by Ian and people at Local Motion who had provided data and studies and things like that. As noted, Brad and I walked and measured and observed Pine Street. Among the places that we visited, and there were actually additional ones beyond these since we've done this. We visited Burlington, including walking the entire length of Pine Street, which has any number of different pedestrian and bike lanes, really bike lanes painted on there, and have had those on there for years now successfully. We visited South Lincoln Road in Lincoln, measured lines, took photos, observed how traffic dealt with that road width. It's not exactly the same as Pine Streets, and certainly the biggest difference is that it's nowhere near as heavily traveled. But the approach to it, meaning lines on both sides of the streets, were what had been floated. And then we had received a lot of community input, both proactive and just active, I guess you would call it, from Pine Street residents. And that's what led into this. Here are a couple of photos that we had taken on the up in Lincoln just to show overall where we were leaning as a group. You can see that this is a wider road, not by a massive amount, but it is wide enough that, you know, 2 cars could probably pass safely within the bounds of the white lines. And this is where, after discussions with the group that went on over the course of months, we were starting to really narrow in on some of the reasons, just to remind everybody why as we looked at guidance from the US DOT, or we looked at guidance from the US DOT on the types of lines. We looked at what lines signal certain things to people, that people don't have to relearn what they mean, because one of the concerns is if we do something like this on Pine Street, people are going to have to learn it. Well, I think we've got to bake in now. I'm saying this with the benefit of 2 more years after we did this work. We're going to have to bake in that if we do something like this on Pine Street, yes, people are going to have to learn something new. This will represent something new in the people who use Pine Street's use of that street. But the reason why we were leaning towards dotted white lines was because a dotted white line signals a certain thing. Here's just another photo of this, kind of a more long view. And where we netted out for suggestions was, as I mentioned, broken white lines. After having measured and understood that we had in our research seen everything from 5-foot wide lanes, which are very much something that cities are leaning towards and affecting and implementing, especially for bicycling, not specific to biking and pedestrians, but specific for bicycling. They were recommending 5-foot widths, and looking all the way down at 1 foot or 2-foot widths rather, and understanding that a 2-foot width isn't an appreciable difference visually for a car coming. We landed on the 3 foot one from inside edge of the line to the pavement edge. The lane width at the time, and Jessica, I'm not sure if you know if this has changed, but the lane width at the time, meaning the width between the dotted lines, would vary slightly, since Pine Street at that moment in time that we took the measurements is variable. There were places where it was 17 feet. There were places where it was 18 feet. I think, Brad, there might have been places that got up into like 21 or 22 feet wide or something like that. Pine Street at the time was absolutely not a constant width. So we figured we'd mention that lane width would vary slightly. There's more variation, as we noted, from the town garage to Maple Street, and far less from Maple Street to North, where the width isn't simply more consistent, it's also narrower, if I recall. At the time, we had been suggesting stop signs on Pine at all the intersections. That morphed into the formal proposal for stop signs, which were not at all intersections. And as I mentioned before, that's been parked by the select board regardless, as well as the suggestion of potentially having no through traffic signs at both ends, along with one on the south end of Liberty, because, you know, what is trying to dance around town without without Liberty Street being able to complete people's unfettered access from one end to the other. And you'll see crossed out down here the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, which I crossed out prior to showing everybody this, simply because the select board didn't seem, the last we had contact with them on this subject, they didn't seem anxious to move forward with the 25-mile-an-hour thing. I and many others that we have talked to, Jessica, you mentioned a lot of people within the village's limits, or the village police district's limits, were in favor of this. But it was here as part of our overall Pine Street traffic calming. So it's interesting to hear that at least the mechanics of doing that might be more favorable than they were previously. So I'm going to stop sharing. So that just brings everybody up to date with where the line project was the last time we touched it, back in 2022. Jessica, I don't know if understanding, again, like now we're going to be going into October and it's more than likely going to be academic. Do you have any updates on if the road crew has any plans to paint lines on Pine Street independent of anything that we might be asking?
I hadn't heard that they had plans because they don't, I mean, if they paint it, they sort of have to do it by hand. I don't know if you remember last year when they hand painted River Road. It was
Yep.
like, you know, so usually they contract with a company that has a truck that paints the lines, like a machine. And so my understanding was that that they weren't coming this fall. But it would probably be worth an email to Eric to see when they're budgeting and planning for that company to come and paint the lines, because you would want to know, you know, bring this up to the select board ahead of time so that then we could see what the cost would be. I mean, in the beginning, they were talking about the cost of doing additional striping at around 5,000, but that's when we were asking to do like sort of a green side, you know, like they do in
Yep.
Burlington or Williston. So we were asking to do that, and it seemed like the extra paint color might be more expensive. If you're just doing white striping, it might not be that far out of the normal budget just to put regular lines on it. But I think that people would be really open to it because, you know, we've explored putting in sidewalks on Pine Street and there's just no capacity to do that.
Yeah.
But as we all know, I mean, all of us have been on Pine Street and there's a lot of people walking their dogs and kids going to school and ladies taking walks and talking together. And just having a space where if they stay in those lines, a car will know to be looking for them, I think would make a big difference there. And we're not going to get sidewalks, so it's not like we can just wait and get a sidewalk. I mean, I think this is the only solution.
Yep.
I can say as a pedestrian who frequents Pine Street and also lives on Pine Street, I had a very close call a couple days ago where a motorist was going well and above the speed limit, and we were on the very edge of the pavement, and they gave us about 6-inch clearance, and it was a pretty scary event. So I think anything visually that could help at least make people aware that, like, hey, this is okay for people to be walking here. You need to we need it, and I feel like time is of the essence. We're just kind of I don't know, we're just getting lucky. and something big can happen, and we need to get in front of it. Personally, I feel this is a urgent matter.
There's been also we should maybe reach out to the Chief Nason about this. There seems to have been an uptick in, as Brad noted, speeds now on the street now that it's been paved. And we're also noticing on Liberty and on Munsell that cars are going a lot faster on those streets as well since the paving. So we should probably reach out to Chief Nason and put in a request for his little radar machine there, just to do a 1 week or 2 week survey on each of those streets to see if, there's anything substantive to those observations, to those kind of more anecdotal points, because it has seemed like we've seen a lot more, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Brad, but more aggressive driving on these streets since the road's been finished. And obviously we're coming off of a few weeks of the road being dirt, which, brought the use down to practically nothing. But we're seeing cars blow through the West Pleasant, or the West Pleasant Munsell stop sign more and more frequently now in the couple weeks since the road's been paved. And I don't know why. I'm not saying those things are connected, but there's been a kind of a drasticness to the behaviors on these other streets that wasn't present throughout the summer. But again,
That's
all
also-
oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think that's why you probably want to do more than one measure. Like, I don't know if the stop signs, I think the stop signs will slow traffic, but then people tend to speed up till they hit the next stop sign. I think, visually narrowing the road so that people feel that they need to be a little bit slower and more careful will help. So, I mean, maybe doing more than one thing will help, but we've been receiving a lot of complaints from residents saying the same thing, that people are driving really aggressively and really fast. That basically they're using it as a way to, cut out the lights and the stop signs. And so they're not stopping at the other stop signs. They're kind of blowing right through them with maybe a look, maybe nothing. So I think you might want to propose more than one measure. So visually narrowing the street, the stop signs, the slower speed limit, like a couple of things together that basically say, there's no shortcut. This is
Yeah.
a village full of people walking and kids riding to school, and you need to be careful,
Got it. Well, again, this conversation is good. It's academic because we can't vote on it. Jessica, I apologize for that we're not in a position to move this forward in front of the select board yet. We will, as we always do everything we can to get a full board for next month's meeting and try to move this. We'll be in a position, I'll add what you noted, add a few other measures into this that we can vote on as well at next month's meeting. So that we can quickly bring something in front of the select board. And I'll also get something for the board position post to see if we can bolster our ranks in the meantime as well. Let's see. So if there's nothing else on Pine Street, is there anything else on Pine Street? So then we will move forward to other business. Jack, as mentioned, you're new to this, but I mentioned this last time. Other business is typically anything that we didn't account for going in, or also any additional comments or anything like that from the public that joined late, anything like that. it's a catch-all. I'll mention to the group what I've mentioned the last few meetings. And I think it's more important now because we're back on the Pine Street thing. I'm hesitant to add additional business for a variety of reasons. One, our board attendance. Two, we've had the grants and initiatives agenda item on the agenda as a standard item for over a year and haven't had any formal discussion or anything proposed by any of the board members in that time. So that's why that got moved off of the agenda. If anybody happened to have come with anything expecting to discuss that, this is a good time to discuss that. But I just wanted to let everybody know why it was absent this month, just the dual purpose of we have Pine Street to discuss, and we have historically, that agenda item has unfortunately gotten no traction, even though we've got a really good parking lot of ideas for it. So does anybody have any other business to discuss this month? All right, then if that's it, I'll end by saying thanks to everybody for joining. Jessica, it's great to see you. Jack, Jack, it's good you're here. Jim, thanks as always for joining us. To the board, thank you. I'll ask our board members if I get a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
And can I get a second, please? Second from Kevin. Brad, mark it, 7:38. Everyone, see you in email. Yell if you need anything.
Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Bye, everyone.